He's not dead. She stopped the Alpha King's funeral. What happened next shocked everyone. The funeral bells rang across Blackthorn Ridge on a gray morning, and no one in the kingdom could remember a sadder day. King Damien Blackthorn, the strongest alpha the pack had known in 100 years, lay in a wooden casket lined with silver cloth. His face was pale, his chest did not rise, his eyes stayed closed. The physicians had examined him twice and said the same terrible words each time: the king was dead. Thousands had gathered outside the great hall to say goodbye. Warriors stood with their heads bowed. Mothers held their children close. Even the birds seemed to fall silent that morning, as if the whole forest understood what had been lost. Inside the hall, Marcus Blackthorn stood near the casket, dressed in black, his expression carefully arranged into grief. He was Damien's younger brother, and by the laws of the pack, the throne would pass to him the moment the funeral rites were complete. He kept glancing toward the doors, as if waiting for something, or perhaps hoping nothing would happen before the ceremony ended. Elder Cassia, the pack's oldest and wisest guide, stood at the front, holding a ceremonial staff carved from ancient oak. She had led 100 funerals in her long life, but something about this one felt wrong to her. She could not explain it. It was a small, nagging feeling, like a whisper she couldn't quite hear. She raised her staff to begin the final blessing. That was when the doors of the great hall burst open. A young woman ran inside, her boots muddy, her breath ragged, her hair falling loose from its braid. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Guards moved to grab her, but she pushed past them, running straight toward the casket. "Stop!" she shouted. "Please, stop! He's not dead!" The hall fell into stunned silence. Every eye turned to her. Her name was Elena Voss, and almost no one in the room recognized her. She worked in the healing house at the edge of the village, treating minor wounds and fevers. She was not important. She was not powerful. She was, by every measure the pack used, simply ordinary. But Elena had spent the last 3 days at the bedside of wounded warriors who had fought in the same battle where Damien had fallen, and what she had seen in their wounds had chilled her to the bone. "You don't understand," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I've seen this before. I know what this is." Marcus stepped forward, his jaw tight. "This is a funeral, not a healing house. Guards, remove her." 2 guards grabbed Elena's arms. She did not fight them, but she did not stop speaking either. "The wound on his shoulder," she said quickly, desperately, looking at Elder Cassia instead of Marcus. "It's black at the edges, isn't it? Almost like burnt skin, but it doesn't smell of fire. I saw it on 3 other warriors. They were pronounced dead too, by physicians who didn't know what they were looking at. But I brought 2 of them back. I can bring him back too, if you let me try." Elder Cassia's staff trembled slightly in her hand. She raised it again, but this time not to bless the dead. She raised it to signal a pause. "Let her speak," Cassia said. Marcus's face flickered with something sharp and impatient, though he quickly smoothed it into concern. "Elder, with respect, this is not the time for—" "I said let her speak." Cassia's voice left no room for argument. Even a future king did not interrupt the elder twice. The guards loosened their grip on Elena. She stepped forward, closer to the casket, and looked down at the still body of the king. "There is a poison," she explained, turning to face the crowd now, her voice growing steadier as she found her courage. "It's rare. Most healers today don't even know it exists anymore, because it hasn't been used in generations. It's called Nightshade Ash. It doesn't kill the way most poisons do. It slows the heart until it seems to stop completely. It stops the breath until it seems to disappear. To anyone examining the body, it looks exactly like death. But it isn't death. Not yet." A murmur spread through the hall. Warriors exchanged uneasy glances. Someone in the back whispered, "My grandmother used to speak of that poison. She said the old enemies of our pack used it long ago, in wars before any of us were born." Elena nodded at the voice, grateful for the support. "The physicians aren't wrong to think he looks dead. Nightshade Ash is designed to trick even the most experienced eyes. But an alpha's body doesn't simply stop healing, not even from a fatal wound, unless something unnatural is stopping it. That should have been the first warning." Elder Cassia stepped closer to the casket and studied Damien's shoulder, where a bandage covered the wound. She gestured for it to be removed. When the cloth was lifted away, the skin beneath was exactly as Elena had described, blackened at the edges, though there was no scent of burning, no sign of the sickness that usually crept in after death. "How much time," Cassia asked quietly, "before it becomes true death?" "I don't know," Elena admitted. "That's why I ran here. That's why I didn't wait for anyone's permission. If we wait any longer, it won't matter whether I know the cure or not." Marcus's voice cut through the tension, louder now, edged with something colder than grief. "This is madness. A healing house girl making wild claims over the body of our king? The physicians examined him. They are trained. She sells herbs to farmers with fevers." Elena turned to face him directly, and for a moment, something in her eyes did not look ordinary at all. It looked like certainty. "Then let me try, and if I'm wrong, you'll have lost nothing but a few more minutes at a funeral that was already going to happen. But if I'm right, and you stop me, you will have let your own brother die when he could have lived." The hall went utterly silent. Even Marcus seemed to realize that every eye in the room was now on him, waiting to see how he would respond to those words. Elder Cassia made the decision for him. She will try. Elena did not waste another second. She had brought a small satchel with her, one she had prepared in a rush before running to the hall. From it, she pulled dried moonflower root, a pale silver ash kept in a small glass vial, and a clean blade. Her hands moved quickly but carefully, grinding the moonflower root in a stone bowl, mixing it with the silver ash, and adding drops of water from a flask at her hip. "What is she doing?" someone whispered. "The antidote," Elena said, not looking up from her work, aware that the whole hall was watching her every move. "Nightshade Ash slows the body's life force until it nearly stops. Moonflower root and silver ash can restart it, but only if paired with something living, something with enough strength to push past what the poison has done." She lifted the blade and, without hesitation, drew it lightly across her palm. A thin line of blood welled up. Several people in the crowd gasped, but Elena simply let a few drops fall into the mixture. "My grandmother was a healer, touched by the moon's blessing," she explained, her voice quiet now, almost private, though everyone could hear her in the silence. "She taught me that some healers carry life force strong enough to lend to others. I don't know if I have enough of her gift, but I have to try." She knelt beside the casket, lifted Damien's head gently, and pressed the small dose of the mixture to his lips, tilting it slowly into his mouth. Then she pressed both hands over his chest, closed her eyes, and waited. Nothing happened. The seconds stretched unbearably long. Marcus took a step forward, his expression shifting toward something like relief, as if the silence proved his point. "Enough," he said. "She has had her chance." "Wait," Elder Cassia said sharply. Elena did not move. Her eyes remained closed, her hands steady over Damien's heart, her lips moving in words too quiet to hear. Sweat had gathered at her brow. Her whole body trembled slightly with effort, as if she were pouring something invisible out of herself and into the body beneath her hands. Then, faintly, so faintly that at first no one was sure they had seen it at all, Damien's chest rose. A gasp swept through the hall like wind through trees. His chest rose again, deeper this time. His fingers twitched. Elder Cassia rushed forward, pressing 2 fingers to his neck, and her eyes widened. "There's a pulse," she said, her voice shaking with disbelief. "There's a pulse." The hall erupted into chaos, gasps and cries, and disbelief all tangled together. Warriors who had stood in silent mourning moments before now surged forward, craning to see. Someone began to cry, though this time from shock rather than sorrow. Damien's eyes opened. He drew in a long, ragged breath, blinking against the light, confusion washing over his face as he took in the crowd, the casket, the silver cloth beneath him. His gaze found Elena first, kneeling beside him, exhausted but smiling through tears of relief. "What," he rasped, his voice hoarse from disuse, "is happening?" "You were poisoned," Elena said softly. "You almost died. I mean, they thought you had." Damien tried to sit up, and several hands reached to help him, though he waved most of them away, still weak, but clearly alive in every sense that mattered. His eyes swept the room until they landed on his brother, standing frozen near the edge of the crowd, his face drained of color. Something shifted in Damien's expression. Even in his weakened state, the instincts of an alpha did not fade easily. "Marcus," he said slowly, "you knew." It was not a question. Marcus opened his mouth to protest, but Elder Cassia stepped forward, her staff striking the stone floor with a sound that echoed through the hall. "The physicians who examined the wound were given instructions not to look closely," she said, her voice hard. "I have only just realized it myself, watching this unfold. Someone silenced their questions before they could search deeper. Someone benefited greatly from a funeral proceeding quickly, before anyone could ask why an alpha's body had stopped healing at all." All eyes turned to Marcus. He said nothing, and in his silence, everyone understood the truth well enough. Guards moved to his sides. He did not run. He did not fight. He simply stood there, his ambition laid bare in front of the entire kingdom, the throne he had almost claimed slipping away with every passing second. Damien, still weak but growing steadier with each breath, looked at his brother with something that was not quite anger, and not quite sorrow, but a tired kind of disappointment that cut deeper than either. "Take him to the chambers," he said quietly. "We will speak when I have the strength for it." The guards led Marcus away, and the hall watched him go in heavy silence, the weight of betrayal settling over everyone who had trusted him only moments before. When the doors closed behind them, Damien turned back to Elena, who was still kneeling beside him, looking suddenly unsure of herself now that the danger had passed, and the attention of the entire kingdom rested on her small shoulders. "You saved my life," he said simply. "A stranger, with no obligation to me, ran into my own funeral, and saved my life when trained physicians could not." "I only did what my grandmother taught me," Elena said quietly. "Then your grandmother taught you well." Damien studied her for a long moment, something thoughtful crossing his face, as though he were noticing something about her that had nothing to do with poison or antidotes. "I felt something, when you healed me, something I've never felt before, a warmth that wasn't just the cure working." Elder Cassia, standing nearby, went very still. "My king," she said carefully, "do you know what you are describing?" Damien looked at her, then back at Elena, understanding slowly dawning in his tired eyes. "Tell me I'm wrong." Cassia shook her head slowly. "The old stories say, a true mate bond reveals itself most clearly in moments of life and death, when one soul reaches for another, across the edge of the grave itself." She looked at Elena with new eyes, no longer seeing a healing house girl, but something far more significant. "I do not think you are wrong, my king." Elena's cheeks flushed, and for the first time since bursting through the doors, she looked entirely lost for words. The kingdom that had gathered to bury its king left the great hall that day with a story they would tell for years to come, a story that would be repeated in villages and homes across Blackthorn Ridge for generations. They had come dressed in black, prepared to mourn. Instead, they had witnessed a king return from the edge of death, a traitor exposed, and an ordinary healer step into a future no one, least of all Elena herself, could have imagined that morning. As the crowd slowly filed out, still buzzing with disbelief and wonder, Elder Cassia allowed herself a small, knowing smile. "They came to bury their king," she murmured to no one in particular, "and instead, they witnessed the beginning of a new reign,